everybody that's here.
Turn you green. You're not green.
We'd like to welcome everybody that's here at the city council room and also those that may be joining us on Zoom. This will be the work meeting of the Morgan City Council, April 26, 2022. Let's see.
First item.
I guess we'll talk about it or.
Well, we just tell them where we're at, but
Okay.
I don't know that, because it's on the other, it's on the
It's on
agenda.
the agenda.
So we just kind of where we're at. And then,
Okay, so settlement and agreement between Morgan City and North Oregon Water Users Association, Resolution 2214. Has anybody had a chance to look over that?
I'll say.
Yeah, I have.
I've got a couple of questions as I dig down, but not that it'll change it. I don't think you need to do it, but just want to make sure I understand it.
if you like, I could give an update on where we're at.
Okay.
So, this is just the draft agreement. We've discussed it and sent it to the Water Users Association. Of course, this is after we went through mediation. Feel like we're at the point where we're not negotiating terms, just language so that they're comfortable and we're comfortable with what it says and what the intent is. There's a little bit of discussion on how the water is calculated or figured into the $31 fee. So that's where we're at. It's on the agenda. And Mason, while you're listening, I think we haven't necessarily decided that's for the council, but the idea is maybe we wait and get additional comments back from the Water Users Association to see if they have any other changes before we just do a final, and that way we only have to act on it with the final language. And then if anybody has any specific comments or
Got a couple if we've got it.
wording or something. Mason, while you're here, one of the points of confusion was on the different tiered structures of the water rate, water calculation. I understand the intent, but I think what we want to do is just clean that up. So it just strictly is straightforward and says, for your base rate, your 31, it's your entitled, your total gallons that you brought, from North Morgan. And then the second tier would be after that. So if somebody has 50,000 gallons worth of water, it just strictly goes, tier one is 50,000 for that person until then second tier is overage. If that makes sense.
Can I ask a question at this point?
Sure.
So here's one of my questions. And I think you talked about this last time, but I just want to be clear on this. So let's say that I have 50,000 gallons in the North Morgan Water User Association. That's my monthly share or allotment. Do I really have that 8,000? So in reality, I have 42,000, correct? Of overage.
But I think what
But-
Ty is saying is you have 50,000 over the $31 a month.
Until your overage kicks in, the modified rate. Okay,
Not 58.
not 58.
So instead of taking out the 8,000 and then creating a second tier, just saying your base rate is for your first 50,000, then your second tier is after that.
31.
Because that's how we're gonna plug it into the system,
Yeah.
right? So in my mind, that's, we were going through the calculations today and I'm like, well, the system is just gonna recognize, we just put in the 31, but for that one customer, we put in the allotment of whatever they had. So the whole 50. And then after that, it'll automatically start charging them overage if they hit that. So
But is that what it's saying in this agreement?
I think, Mason, correct me if I'm wrong, but that was the intent, right, of the tier structure?
Yeah, it is. But if we want to simplify it, I can redraft it so that, like you had said, you're basically given a credit into the system for the amount of gallons that you're bringing in on your shares, and then you're treated like any other shareholder after that. And that's how it reads. It may feel a little complicated, but my intent was to make this work for the next 3 decades. And it's entirely feasible that in the next 3 decades, Morgan might break out into a tier 3 or might change its base rate from 8,000 to 6,000 or something different. And the way it's written, it accounts for that. But I think, Ty, what you had said is that if I were to redraft it so that you get a credit of 50,000 gallons at a certain flat rate, and then anything after that is treated as overage, I can do that. I can redraft it that way.
Okay.
I think that simplifies it, doesn't it?
Yeah, and really I understood the intent too, Mason, when you made it, and then when I went to explain it was more difficult, just because of the math involved for the shareholders in the system. It didn't match up with what they have on paper. So I think it'd just be simplify it to say, I have X amount of shares, it's this many gallons a share, this is what I get, before I get charged overage.
Right.
Yeah.
It would be helpful the next time this is presented to the water shareholders, that the attachment that's going to be the capital L list that is referenced in this agreement needs to be generated so that they can then look at their own name and determine whether they agree with the amount of gallons that we're calculating. The way I've drafted it, it's a general calculation that anybody could run on their own shares.
Right.
But rather than force them to do it, let's get that list together. Now, it's going to take some coordination with the board, but I think that will solve a lot of the problems.
Okay. Anyway, that was just one point. And then the other thing is, if it's just just listed as your base rate for whatever gallons that we're gonna credit, that doesn't preclude us from having a tiered system on the overage after that. At that point, if you're in the overage and we've adopted a new rate that has a tiered structure for whatever, just apply at that point.
Correct.
So, any other?
Yeah, on that idea, on just how it's figured, I'm going to look at just the big picture, not just an individual, but doing a little bit of the math. And keep in mind, I've done this based on the original tiered program with the 8,000 gallons, but I think the bottom line is all going to be the same. We'd have 41 hookups, or we'd be servicing 41 accounts at $31 is about $1,300 a month. Would be our expected revenue. If we had 41 hookups at 8,000 gallons, again, back to the tiered structure, that'd be 328,000 gallons a month. The water of 3.7 million gallons is made available to the overall group every month. If we subtract out the 328 for the 8,000 and Morgan's got 235 shares, if we subtract out 424,000 for our shares, because we're not going to worry about that, that still leaves 3 million gallons that we need to make available to these 41 users. Is that a fair statement? Every month?
Up to.
Yeah, the potential is there. Granted, they're not using it now, but if down the road they said, yeah, we've got some use for it, they could use up to 3 million gallons a month. And we'll come back to that. That said, would we have to, suppose they said we need 2.9 million gallons, would it fall to us to improve the system to provide those other 3 million gallons? And how much of a concern is that? And then secondly, what's realistic? And I think there's some other things that come into play that help mitigate or soften that a little bit, because 3 million gallons a month is a ton of water times 12. There's 3 million gallons and we're getting $1,300 for it. $1,300 a month for it. That could get a little pricey on our part. As I understand it in the agreement, they cannot transfer shares to other people. They can't sell it because we'll have the interest in the water now. So It's not theirs to transfer. And it has to stay with the home. So how likely is it that we're going to be using this 3 million gallons, or the potential's there 20 years from now that they could say, oh, by the way, send us an additional 2.9 million to
Yeah, so the.
our agreement.
Yeah, so it's very low. And the reason is because they're no longer an association and we're just dealing with individual connections. So any one of those connections can only use up to whatever their amount is. And they're
Right.
not gonna
But
ever be
in
able to,
total, it's 3 million.
if they all got together
Right.
and they all made the
Sure.
same claim. But
Yeah.
the other thing is they have to be able to put it to beneficial use. And,
Yeah, so what
So-
we're maybe leading up to is this 3 million gallons, they've lost it anyway. Because how are they ever going to use it?
I would say if they sign this agreement with Morgan City, then to me, it looks like they've saved their 3 million gallons. I would think.
Well, they saved it, but they have no way to use it.
And that brings up an
If
interesting.
they they really saved it.
Where would I guess my question is, to your point, Dave, because you're right. Could a state engineer, the state engineer, could he walk in and take a look at that system and say, wait a minute? There's all this water over there that's not putting to beneficial use. Could he possibly make some sort of an adjustment on that?
Yes. Yes.
But he'd be dealing with us at that point because we have the interest in the
But I guess it would probably be safer in the hands of, I don't know, in Morgan City than I would think than, yeah, is that a fair statement?
The reason it's safer in the hands of Morgan City
Mhm.
is because Morgan has a 40-year period of time before we can actually plan 40 years out
Oh, good.
as to what water supply would be needed, whereas the individual only has a 7-year. After 7 years, if he hasn't put it to
Makes
beneficial
sense,
use.
doesn't it?
So in the hands of the city, and then there's also a Lazarus clause, which if somebody hasn't been using it for a period of time, which is the case that might be argued up here, after 15 years of use by the city. Now, the city would claim, of course, that it has been used, but even if they claimed it wasn't, after 15 years of use by the city, it would become a firm right again. And so there's a number of really beneficial aspects to the city owning that share. Whereas the property owner would lose it. And the way it is, the way that the engineer works is he would come to the company and say, which shares are not being put to beneficial use. This is if the company continued to exist. And the company would have to figure out which shares they wanted to cut off anyway. They would have to say, well, he hasn't been using his and he hasn't been using his. So we choose those 3 to forfeit. And that's essentially the decision the company would have to make if it continued to exist. Whereas if you put it in the hands of the city, that no longer applies. We now have a 40-year period of time to put that water to beneficial use. And we do need to make some changes because right now it's they're secondary shares.
and we need to shore up the
And we need to
water rate.
change them to M&I use. Is what we need to do.
Back to the 3 million gallons and our responsibility, there's some fairly significant shareholders there that could use 50,000, 100,000. Do we, out of those 41 users, do we see anything likely that would be using those kinds of, none out of the 41?
Well, the big use would be if someone reestablished a mink farm at one location, but for the most part, all of the other uses pretty minimal, pretty average use. home use.
There's not you don't see big swaths of land that could be all of a sudden irrigated that hasn't been for 30 years. That
Yeah, no,
we need to provide that water to them.
yeah, not really. And then there's other provisions too, that like if we're in a time of drought or we have any other water restrictions that we put on the whole system, they still have to,
That'd be pro rata.
they have to just kind of comply. And so it's an up to amount, but for the most part, it's, water that they can't deliver to themselves currently. So it's just
Yeah,
nice to
I
know
think
that they
it's-
just,
I think the contract faces reality. I mean, it is what it is, and if it can't be used, and it's not going to be used, it isn't. But yet there's a little bit of a moral victory on their part that I've kept my water and I can use up to whatever I need to use for whatever value that is.
Yeah. And that's also why it was drafted the way it was, is because instead of, we would never come to terms on a dollar amount that the water is worth, because it's a company-wide, a whole different scenario. And it's pretty much what anybody's willing to pay, what water is worth. The land can be appraised. So that's why we kind of went down that road. And so what we're doing is we're buying them out of that water with just a beneficial use of 30 years with an up to amount. But like you mentioned, it can't be put on other properties. It can't be other connections that don't currently exist.
It can't be sold.
Yeah, it stays with the property. And so that's really the potential. So the likelihood, you know, if somebody has a beneficial use and they use it, I don't think we feel bad about that. It just can't be at the detriment of the system.
Yeah, the entire system. If the water's there and they have the use, so be it. I mean, that's.
But the 31 right now is what's paying for the pipes, the tank, the treatment, and that's the same. It's only that much, but it's that much for every city resident.
Yeah, but that's paying for basically 328,000 gallons, not 3 million. If we had to, again, if we had to deliver what we've agreed to, that could get pricey.
Well, and really the delivery cost isn't more than so the 31, if right now, for example, we have tons of people that pay 31 for 8,000 gallons and they don't even come close to 8,000. But that didn't make the cost less of having the pipes in the ground. And right. And the nice thing about our system is, and particularly the source of water, is that it requires very minimal treatment. And so in a Weber Basin scenario, there's production costs of cleaning that water, where ours is so minimal that the gallonage, the flow through doesn't really change our.
It's an inexpensive source for us.
And it's gravity. So it's gravity, it's clean. You know what I mean? So we're not paying pumping costs. We're not doing filters and UV lights and so the production of the water for us isn't a terrible.
Yeah, so I think that helps mitigate the 3 million gallons. We're talking
Right.
about.
So if it's there and it's available and it's minimal treatment, what we want is just to make sure everybody on the city system's paying their share of the system, the $31.
I guess that was my concern is what we're taking on mitigatable, if that's a word.
It is now.
And all of these things come together to say, yeah, we can live with that.
And on our system, any restrictions that we put on would come into play, right? So if we say, hey, on this side of town, we're having trouble with this tank, this spring just went offline, this pressure reducing valve just had an issue, and we have to maneuver and say, hey, we need to restrict some water usage. We still have the ability to say, this is just a citywide issue. We're not picking on anybody. And on their side, they're obligated to be a responsible water user.
I like that. I mean, that's a victory all the way around for
Yeah,
everybody.
I mean,
for us.
and that's the whole goal, is to put the water to the most
Yeah.
beneficial use.
That was kind of one of my thoughts is, we're probably this year looking at water restrictions already. And so it's like, if we're all under water restrictions and they've got 100,000 gallons, well, then would they necessarily be under water restrictions? They already answered that for me.
Yeah, but on the other side, that is our payment to them. It's like an owner financing type situation where in order to shore up or acquire that water right, which is, it's valuable, it's
Right.
We're paying for it for over the next
30 years. Yeah. In just the potential use, so it's not even the total use. So that's kind of the idea.
Where was just out of curiosity, where did the 30 years come from?
From mediation when we went,
Yeah, I was like, did it start at 20 and go to 30 or 50 or?
Yeah. I mean, that seemed a little generous to me, but again, it got the deal done. So
well, and before we had less
It's
years,
something
but
we
it
can
was transferable. We had other things in there where it got a little bit more complicated. So, the person instead of the property owned it. We had, just back and forth on how it would work best and really the cleanest. And I think the other thing that the 30 years does is make sure that the current membership to the end of their lifetimes pretty much.
Sure, yeah. After that, they won't be around to worry about. Well, Steve will.
Yeah.
30 years.
When he says he'll be 10 toes up, he's just meaning just in bed.
Yeah.
It's not a,
6 feet deep.
no, yeah,
Just a bed being fed.
with the remote. And so,
Ty, do you have any feel on how much water these 41 users use right today from
Yeah,
our
we-
monitoring last summer?
yeah, we've tracked that. They use less than their shares as a group, but last year they also had a couple of anomalies where they had a couple of really large leaks. that
Yeah,
got
I mean,
fixed.
discounting that, if we said each one could use 8,000 gallons, that's 328,000 gallons per month. You're suggesting it's somewhat below that.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're not.
and that was even before they had, that was back when it was $1.50 and
Sure, yeah.
really no reason to track it at all. Now they're on the current city rate and currently paying the overage. So some of them have really felt the impact or aware of their usage, but it's not
There's
many.
another plus to them. They'll, all of a sudden that overage goes away for a lot of them.
That's kind of the incentive.
It got you
Yeah.
to make it work on their part.
Yep.
Guys did good.
So the bottom line is tonight, we're going to table this because it's on the agenda.
Well, that's what it's
Isn't it on the agenda?
yeah, it's an option when you get there. I would it's
So
not mine to recommend, it's the mayor's meeting, but
Were we gonna update it?
we have a couple of our own changes, the Masons gonna work on, and I think we want to hear back from them before we do a final.
Yeah.
So that was kind of we had it on here, but we didn't get it to them in time to get the feedback to have the final version. But if we take it up, I feel better about having a final clean copy.
We'd do that in, say, 2 weeks from now.
Mhm. Yeah, I think we'll have it in 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, I don't know if the appraisal.
Well, the agreement, then we have the whole process of the appraisal.
Appraisal comes after the agreement.
And we won't close on it, but we'll get the document approved.
Talking to Mayor Little today, and he, like where it says the shareholder shall in all the things, he thought that just sounded a little weird and wondering, because there won't be a shareholder. All that. And the city's just gonna give them an allotment of land.
Kind of.
And
Well, the agreement
can I
before-
respond to that particular question? So the way I drafted it, I used the word shareholder because this agreement is between us and the shareholders. You're correct that eventually there will be no shareholders, but currently they are shareholders. And to change their status from shareholders to non-shareholders, I used that term sort of as a term of art. But if we want to use something different, if it's going to assist in the negotiation, I'm happy to use something like individual. Trouble is that some of these, I think, are entities.
Because Mason won't, each current shareholder will have to come to the city as an individual, not as a company, correct?
So the status, the process is that the shareholder redeems their shares into the company. And in exchange, we are promising to the company and that existing shareholder that they will then be treated as special individuals in our system for 30 years.
That's a good word, special.
Well,
That's a Utah word.
Is it an all or nothing proposition? Like, does,
The company is making the decision.
can I hold
All
out
of
if I
the
want?
No.
Well,
What happen eventually? So what would happen eventually? You wouldn't have shareholders, you would have Morgan City ratepayers. Some would be on a modified rate schedule. Would that be a fair way of saying it? For 30 years?
That's exactly right. Yeah, I guess if Mason, if a shareholder did not come in and essentially sign away their shares, redeem their shares or whatever, they would essentially still be on the system just as regular users. and they would not be obtaining the benefits that
Of
the agreement,
Of the modified rate.
modified agreement.
That is exactly correct. And to boot, they would not have anything to hold as hostage is a really strong word, but they would not be able to hold anything up because as part of this agreement, the company is agreeing to transfer to us the water right. So that holdout shareholder is a member of a company that has little to no assets left.
Major assets gone.
We no longer a company.
Sharon, yeah, it really would not be a good thing not to sign it because you lose all of those benefits that they argued for, so.
Mason, I thought I heard you say our agreements with the shareholders, it's with the association. Is that fair?
Yes, if I misstated it, I apologize. It's sort of a three-part agreement. Our agreement is with the company, and the company will be signing off here, recognizing, of course, that in order for the company to have the delegated authority to do so, enough of the shareholders actually have to agree in their own meeting to do so.
So I want in that light, and could they use the word shareholder for their internal purposes? They still need to keep track of the shares, and I guess so do we, so that we know what that beneficial overage use is.
Yeah, it's a definitional term. Legally, I can use whatever word I want. It's whether or not
By
you use
definition.
a body would like me to use something different to help in the negotiation.
So the way I understand it is, once the agreement's done and each individual comes, then it's not necessarily that person's a shareholder.
Yeah, they can call them whatever they want internally.
Modified rate.
They're a resident that has a modified rate, I guess.
So moving forward, let me ask a question. So we're gonna go rework this resolution. Is that correct? Is that,
For the agreement.
I mean, excuse me, the agreement. So it'll come back to us. So, and then if we passed it, made a motion to pass the agreement, then does it go to, how does that work? Then would it go to the North Morgan Water Users Association for them to peruse it and decide whether or not they wanted to agree to it? Or
Can they pass it before? we do it?
I mean, what's the timeline here? I'm a little.
I think it really doesn't matter whether we pass it first or they pass it first, once we agree on the language. So I think Ty's saying that we'll get the language to this new amended language.
Okay.
Mason will make the changes and we'll get it to them. Then they can hold their board meeting whenever they want to hold their board meeting and get it approved on their end. And then we can do the same on ours. The order of who approves first
Doesn't matter.
doesn't matter. Yeah.
And really, even without a board meeting, we'll just get their feedback because the board has the ability to negotiate on their behalf. But what we don't want is just to have any changes after.
Yeah.
Right. And then we just say, hey, this is the one we approved. This is the terms you agreed to. Then they take it back to their shareholders and have their meeting and do whatever. And we either get it signed or we don't.
And if,
But at that point, we're not coming back and saying, well, we've reached the end of negotiations. It's just right now, we're not even talking about terms. We're just talking about wording. So
and if we do end up they say no, essentially what happens is we go back to status quo, which is we bill them $31 a month and they pay the overage when it comes through. And so they really don't get all the benefits that this agreement would provide them because it's just business as usual.
Incentive on their part.
So essentially, we've been operating around an agreement for 4 years, right?
And so we've been charging them just as if they were regular customers. Is that
for the last 2 years,
so?
last year, I guess it's been about a year.
Last year. So just real quick, one more thing. That Mayor Little and I talked about was on page 6 under I, if a shareholder intentionally, knowingly, recklessly, or negligently fails to put all or portion of the delivered water to beneficial use, like leaks or wasting it or stuff like that, then the shareholder modified rate shall not apply. So what, in interpreting that means that if we have a shareholder, I know of one of them actually, that when she's gonna turn on her sprinkler system, it's gonna leak because it was a big leak. And if she doesn't willingly or fix it, then that's what you call one strike. Right? And if the next month comes out and it is the same situation, that's two strikes. And the next one comes out, the next building, and there's three strikes, and she's just put to the 8,000 gallons and then would have to pay that huge overage.
I don't think that's the way it reads. I think she starts paying the overage as soon as the leak hasn't been corrected. If it's intentional.
And that's.
Yeah, that's
So-
what I
so
mean. If
she
it's
could be
not
paying-
intentional.
She could be paying if it was intentional, she could be paying the overage from the first, at the beginning of the first strike, the second strike, and the third strike.
So the example, let's use me as an example. All of a sudden, December, I was up to 75,000 gallons of water.
A lot of showers.
And the city came to me and says, you might have a leak. And if no, I'm just saying it could. If I say, get out of here, it's my water, I get this much water, you know,
That'd be intentional.
that's a strike.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and then you'd start paying at that.
But
moment.
if they come to me and I say, oh my goodness, and I find a leak, I fix it,
Mhm.
that's not a strike.
Well, that's, yeah, fair enough. We talked last meeting a little bit, who enforces that and who administers it, and that could get a little bit tricky, but it is what it is again.
That's always been an interesting,
Yeah, who
I've often,
decides whether it's intentional?
yeah, I mean, and then that first month, you notice that leak. I've always had a little bit of a problem sometimes charging that customer for that.
Boy, I agree with Tony on that.
Back when I had the Water Enterprise Fund, because in Morgan over where I live, if I had a leak in my line going into my home or my rocky riverbed, I would.
You'd never know.
We discussed down at St. George, we have rocks that the water
Yeah.
drops down into where other,
My lawn
play
wouldn't be poofing out.
Yeah, it
I
bubbles to
would
the
know
top.
when- And I was under and I'm just throwing this out, I was sort of always felt good about the fact that maybe we had some sort of forgiveness on that first month, but after that, then it's shame on you because you didn't have, now you know, and you need to get it fixed, so. But I could see potentially where somebody could get hit pretty good with the water bill, not knowing they had.
That would not be a good deal. We discussed that before in here.
Yeah,
so anyway, you could question then that Ray had was,
Well, the other one that Ray and I talked about it and wanted to emphasize to everybody is that if there's a citywide or a system-wide issue such as drought, emergency, the delivery of the water under modified rate may be adjusted in conformance with the citywide water management plan. So in other words, if we get into a strict drought, then those shares or whatever gallons would be adjusted accordingly.
I think that would, again, have to be pro rata with what the city's doing to everybody else.
Right.
There have to be some fairness to that.
But you alluded a little bit that if they want to use their water, they can. But if the state comes in and says, we're officially doing this,
3 million gallons isn't available. It's only
Right.
1.5 million this month.
The other reality is we're more likely, instead of on gallons, we're more likely to impose something like no outdoor watering.
Yeah.
So regardless how much water you have, you can't water outdoors. Sorry.
Even odd or something.
And because we really don't do restrictions on gallonage on the culinary system.
Interesting comment made down there in St. George. I can't remember if any of you were in that breakout with me or not. They were talking about water rights and some gentleman, I forget what city he was from. I guess they had a lot of problems last year. And he says, you can have all the water rights in the world, but if the well's dry and the springs, he says, your water rights don't amount to a thing, you know? That's very true.
Does anybody have a motion to table or
We'll have
This
to
is
do
just
that.
a work session.
just move on, right?
So I've got one question for Mason. Have you ever come across a Scott Care?
Yeah, it's my uncle.
Yeah.
For better or worse, I hope that you have good report.
Yeah, Scott and I went to school together at Viewmont.
Oh, very cool.
When you see him, tell him hello from Dave Alexander.
Okay, Dave Alexander, I'll do it. He's in Canada on a mission, but I'll let him know.
Good guy.
Text him right now.
Viking?
Yeah, Viewmont Viking. I was going to tell you the year, but I won't tell you
I bet I
that.
know the year. I bet I know the year.
Yeah, I'll bet within one or two for sure. Yeah, no, Scott was a good guy.
They were Vikings clear back then.
Yeah, it's stayed the same too. Yeah. Yeah, that one,
That was politically correct even back.
yeah,
then.
back then we dodged a bullet on that one.
Okay. Item 2, amendment to city manager agreement, resolution 2215.
Does Mason need to stay on or is he on for
I
the,
think he can take the evening off.
all
Hey,
right.
I'll be getting you guys a draft tie, and then we can go from there.
Okay, and
Thank,
Ray might send you just some additional little verbiage comments. So just so you know.
Thank you, Mason.
I do want to say that Ray he's amazing, isn't he?
Yeah, just
yeah.
should have been an attorney.
Well, but what he, when we were talking about some dig points in it,
Mhm.
he said, I can understand how they're feeling, why they're feeling that. I'm going, wow, you're an amazing man.
It's been that way the whole time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
From the
just
very beginning,
yeah.
when he was a councilman, he did the same. thing.
Very thorough.
just as equitable as can be, isn't it?
Okay, the amendment to our city manager
I'm
agreement.
a statesman.
Is there any discussion on what we talked about?
As far as this amendment's concerned.
Here's your chance, Ty, write in whatever you want.
I don't.
I guess the only question I had, just quick, like the manager agreement is a public document. Okay.
Mhm.
My whole life is public.
Yeah. Isn't that the truth?
I don't.
Yeah. I
If
don't-
Ty's good with it, I'm good with it. And I'm assuming Ty's good with it because it's in the
We
packet.
talked with Ty. I think we ended at, you missed a good meeting. We ended at 11:59. was the time.
58 or 59.
Yeah.
Right before Wednesday.
Out of a scary, we didn't want to go into 12:01 because we didn't post the public notice for the next day.
A new day. You guys are catching this.
Like the state legislature there,
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah.
At midnight.
12 o'clock, midnight.
It's
They all
over.
turn into pumpkins.
Yeah. it's
Okay.
over. All
I don't
right.
have anything.
Juneteenth, National Freedom Day?
Yeah.
I didn't understand this,
You have to look it up.
I actually had to do some research.
but I got it explained. And it's not necessarily the 4th of July kind of freedom. It's the freedom of the slaves.
Well, here's 5 other names that it goes by. It's officially the federal statute, the federal legislation is Juneteenth, National Independence Day. It's also known as Jubilee Day, Emancipation Day in Texas, Freedom Day, and that's what our state of Utah elected to use, or Black Independence Day. It's also called that in some places. Then our legislature, on the federal side, Biden passed it into law in last July. You know what it
Discussion
is.
is what? We accept it.
Do you want me to?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes,
Ty.
Ty.
So basically, it's been adopted at the federal and state level. So there's a couple of options at the local level is we already refer to state and federal holidays. So internally, there's,
That'd be a holiday.
or public employees, it's already, so we just do that and take no action on it.
You would observe that holiday because of the state and federal.
Yeah, so by default, right now, we just observe state and federal holidays, right?
You're observing that no matter what.
Yep. And so at the local level, really, the only options is if you want to go contrary to state and
I see.
federal holidays for whatever. And the other one is if you want to take an affirmative action, just to also add the city's voice to that
An exclamation point.
list, or or like I said, so that it's either affirmative, negative, or do nothing, which by default, we're doing anyway. And so there's really no, in my mind, so I'm just speaking from an operational decision. There's really no impact to personnel or the way our offices will be closed unless you tell us, no, we're going to stay open. Like, we're not going to.
Yeah, that'd be the negative.
Yeah, but right now, we just follow state and federal holidays, and so I just add it to the list.
Gary, what has Layton done?
We just did exactly what Ty said. We observe all national and state holidays.
You didn't do it, you didn't
Didn't trade
address
for
it
another.
positively or negatively.
Yeah, and so, and there's really no need to, positively, just like you said, just adds to it, but we haven't done that with any other holidays, not required. Like, we've never gone through a process where we say, we're gonna adopt the 4th of July, but not, and we're gonna adopt Halloween and all of those. And at the local level, it's really the state, we're a subdivision of the state, so we have never done that process with any other holiday. And then on the contrary, we've never gone contrary to any state or federal holiday. So if we don't do anything, but just good to recognize, I think, that it's out there. And
Sure. I think where the federals made it official and the state has, I think that's the recognition
what's it,
right there.
so that's anyway, the decision points there. Just from my perspective, it doesn't really have a,
Mhm.
So is there only 12 paid holidays for them? I thought once upon a time there was like 13 of them for most companies, but maybe I'm wrong.
and we did 11 before,
10 federal and 1 state.
because of the 24th of July.
I think the last federal, wasn't that?
I
Martin Luther
always
King?
thought there was like
That was the
13,
last
so.
one, yeah.
So it falls on a Monday.
Oh, yeah, always be a
Yeah, the
Monday.
legislature used to actually be in session.
And it's not.
Every day's a holiday for Tony,
I
so.
was gonna say, I plan on taking it off.
Yeah, it was.
Well, and there's nowhere on the agenda in the actual meeting
Didn't have to
to
go back up to.
have to approve anything. It's just so we're aware that the city will be taking it
It's
off.
just it's
Perfect.
awareness. Other cities have, others haven't, but it's right to bring it up to the council to see if it's something you want to act on, and you put on the agenda. If not, then
Appreciate that. That's appropriate.
then
We
it's,
make that decision in the.
It's not on our agenda for.
no, for this one, but that's why we're discussing
We
it.
want it
Is
on.
it's a
If we want it
potential,
on.
it's a potential decision point later if you want it on an agenda, but that's what it is.
Yeah.
That's where we're at.
Gary, we would need to put it on an agenda. We're just accepting.
Yeah, if it doesn't come up on another agenda, I'm just saying that we recognize state and federal holidays, and I plan on having the office closed and the employees the day off.
Worthy of discussion. I think I'm good with the federal and state designation.
Following along with their.
Seems
Okay,
like,
item
we don't have
4.
much of a decision.
With the health insurance. Is there any discussion on that? I actually had a positive thing from the cities of leagues and towns, meeting with other mayors, and they were wondering how they're gonna give their workers a raise or cost of living and everything. And I piped up and says, well, in Morgan, we pay their health insurance. And everybody went, what?
Yeah, way to offer a raise would be.
100% of their premium.
Yeah, 100%. That's.
Everybody offers health insurance. It's just not 100% of the premium.
100%.
Yeah.
I think that's a great benefit. I think
Yeah, it is. It's a
everybody,
little bit unprecedented.
Yeah, there's nobody out there doing that at all. Nobody,
except us.
which is awesome
Yeah,
because we like our employees and we want to keep them around.
right.
So Ty, the discussion would be the percent increase. Is that what we're considering?
Yeah,
Okay.
so that just shows you what the annual increase was for the year, which in the context of everything else, this is just about, this is a little less than it was last year, about 5%.
Yeah, okay, good.
Do we shop at Ty? Do we look around? Do we get different quotes?
Yeah, I didn't do it this year. If you remember, about 2 years ago, I had a whole spreadsheet of every one of the plans. I think we had 7 plans evaluated. And all their premiums, all their health savings accounts, and all of the pluses and minuses on each one of them. And really just went down, down the line. There was another plan that was pretty close. But every time you had a plus, another one had a minus. And so price wise, there wasn't anything that came in like, hey, this is way cheaper. Let's go this route. But what we did discover in that whole process, because at the time I was looking at doing the high deductible plans with the savings accounts. And those did not pan out to be the cost savings that they were going to be. And then we're so small. It takes a larger group on the health insurance to make a difference. So our best option, this was like I think maybe 2 or 3 years ago. How long have I even been here? Anyway,
It was probably 3 years.
we did it 1 year. But for our pricing and to be part of the whole public employee pool was to our advantage.
So the PEHP, is that a for-profit?
It's a nonprofit.
It's nonprofit.
Mhm.
And did we hear there in St. George that 90% of the communities participate in that?
That's the Utah Local Governments Trust.
Trust.
Okay, that was a trust.
That's
They give you
the
your
property,
Ice cream.
Oh, yeah,
the property and liability
the
insurance.
two together.
That's liability insurance.
Take the ice cream.
Paid for PHP.
We understand that the city doesn't cover their dental.
Correct. That's just the rate, but they
That's the
pay
rate.
100% of their dental and it's optional. You don't have to have.
Ty, are we still doing the program you implemented where if they don't need the insurance, we're paying them half of what that premium is? Is that what it was?
Yeah, and so I can't remember, David, if you were on the council or not, but when we also evaluated that, we did an insurance buyout. So at the time, when I first got here, the council was talking about having the employees contribute 20% of the premium or whatever. And there was more cost savings to have people opt out. So we pay them to not be on our insurance if they already have coverage with a different employer. So if, like my spouse works at the school, so if she carries the insurance for our family, then the city pays me the same amount as a single coverage to not have my whole family on there. So we saved the first year we saved 30,000, and then the next year it went up to 40,000 a year to have the handful of employees not on the insurance, which was a much larger savings than just saying everyone can, you pay,
Yeah, just having double coverage.
you pay 10% or
I don't see
whatever.
any trouble with fairness on
So-
that.
No, because.
They opt into it.
Covered, yeah.
So this year, $705.
Yeah. The big epiphany or the point when we did that was I went to the insurance and said, well, if they're using this as secondary coverage, why are we paying the full premium? And they said it's a full premium no matter what, even though we're second. So whoever our employee was the primary, and then the rest of their dependents might be secondary because they're primary on a different insurance. Well, so our opt-out, you can't opt out and not have insurance. You have to prove that your family, that you are covered under an insurance plan in order to opt out. And so, when we pay them out, it's an incentive to them because they get, it counts as taxable income, but they take that amount and instead of having second insurance, they have money to go pay co-pays and out-of-pocket deductibles and stuff, with that.
So, you would pay the employee that elects not to have the secondary insurance half of $705.
The single,
We pay them $705.
Pay them $705.
How do you come up with the dollar? I mean, why wouldn't you choose half of it rather than the full amount?
So, well, when we did it, because that's the dollar amount that we would be
We would have
paying,
paid for them.
that we pay them, but
Then where's our benefit? Wouldn't you want
Because-
something less?
we pay for the full family. Right? So,
Well, if you, well, okay. Oh, I see, because you gotta have a family to have the higher premium, don't you?
so we don't pay half, but we pay the single rate,
so,
correct?
so if it's a single person and we pay them not to be on our insurance, it's a equal, right? Because we're just paying them instead of the insurance.
Right, gotcha.
But if we're paying them that same single rate, so that's the dollar amount, right, that we pay, and that's the incentive. But if they had family coverage or even double coverage, then that's the part that we save.
How many employees elect that?
4. We have about 4 right now, I think.
So if you look, I guess if you look at this right, if you do the math right here, right now, and you look at the new rate,
Mhm.
and somebody chooses not to take it, we're gonna pay them $705, but if it was a family rate, we're saving, it's like a $1,200 a month savings
Mhm.
over 12 months, so
Yeah.
14,000 times 4's, 56,000 or so. Yeah.
Yeah. And we wanted the incentive to be enough. Like if we said, hey, we'll pay you $200 and not be
Right.
on, and they're like, that's not even gonna cover my co-pays, not,
Yeah, I'll
my
Take the
spouse's
secondary
insurance.
insurance, I
Mhm.
got you. I like that.
Yeah, and then the other thing that, well, that's enough, but that's kind of the road we went down.
Okay,
So-
real fast.
You wanna go? No, I'm done.
General plan, I just wanted to have a little bit of a urge. Because of the lack of enthusiasm, not many came to a general plan or meeting or what was happening. And I think Tony and I had a discussion about the planning commission meeting and how this particular zone was gonna be this and that. Dave, we kind of talked about it also. Is,
By the way, Gary, we all sat together for lunch, made sure we didn't talk business.
Good, good.
We talked about you, but we didn't talk.
Talked about me.
Because we couldn't see you down there.
We just kept thinking, Gary's gonna be looking over. our
Yeah.
shoulder.
I missed it.
Yeah, we missed it.
Really did. I missed those lunches.
Saw Steve there.
Yeah, Steve was down there. So,
so what I was gonna urge everybody is if we could study this concept out that we have before us.
Which page you on, Mayor?
Well, the whole thing.
Okay, gotcha.
Tonight or at home, homework.
There's.
We're gonna maybe talk about it. Which week did we decide next?
Well,
The
just so
27th.
everybody's aware, on the 4th of May, there's an open house on the general plan. And they'll be coming here to discuss it. And then it goes for approval by the planning commission on the 17th.
Back up just
27th.
just a little
Who's
bit though.
planning
The
commission?
planning commission talked about a 2-hour work session.
That's the one that we need to,
Is that the 17th? I think that's the work session. But then they have the public hearing after.
That's our planning commission, right?
Yeah.
Not the county.
Not the county, it's ours. Let me text Chris.
Yeah, there was enough discussion about it that they said we need more time.
yes. So basically the idea is,
Lot to digest.
I think it's on I think that's the one on the 4th.
public
That's the
meeting.
open house.
Oh, that's the open house. Sorry.
I thought it was
So
gonna
I
be
think
there.
I think it's a 2-hour discussion on the 17th prior to the public hearing.
I don't like that idea.
Yeah, yeah,
The May 4th meeting is.
the open house.
Public input.
Yeah. Open.
After, that's what I'm saying, after it's sort of already on paper.
I mean, even though it's,
They've already had open houses.
yeah,
Right.
even though it's an open house and public input, we can still have our input on the 17th, would be my thought.
Mhm.
Okay,
Which would be beneficial after,
after
hopefully we
hearing.
have some public input.
So
It's on May 17th at 5 o'clock.
Yeah, there we go. That'd give them the 2 hours, wouldn't it?
17th, yeah.
Okay.
and when do we approve a tentative budget?
May 10th,
When it's ready.
May 10th.
May 10th time. I remember the question I asked you about finances, is creatively. That was a good answer. How are you gonna finance this creatively?
Did I tell you that? I'm getting snippy. I better.
You have that, Gary? or you can have
That's
that?
great.
You can have that if you want.
Or
I'm gonna
snarky
see
thing,
that.
you know.
Get one of these.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
Even better.
Why do you want me to do this?
It's out there on the internet.
Would you mind?
Then we're making some more.
I'll done.
I just have a comment.
These to Gary. And then I'll have,
I just need one.
well,
Oh, it's two.
one's the,
Oh, one's, okay.
Yeah.
See, that tells you how much I look at it.
Right. I just have a comment on the whole process. If you remember, I proposed the project and to get a grant for it.
Right.
And the idea is that this process and the product is there to prompt the discussion, give us a menu of options and considerations for what it is that you want or what you feel like the city wants to be in the future. And so there's no reason to be bashful or shy about the honest input, right? But it's also a lot more helpful to say, instead of this is what I think we prefer, instead of this is just not what we don't like. It's really easy to go through the process and say all the stuff we don't like.
You be part of the solution or part of the problem.
Right. And so, and also recognize that staying exactly like we are is the only option. We can't choose.
So what why is that?
Because nothing stays the same. We're gonna grow. People are gonna move in, right? But Morgan itself is not gonna never accept a new resident, never have a new business develop, never have farms, it's not gonna be the same forever. So as we plan, it's whatever gives us the best option to keep. Definitely, we want to keep the same feel, the same, as much as we can, but it might look a little different.
Yeah, I mean, that right there opens up a lot of discussion. We only have 30 seconds. So I'm going to suggest that the 2-hour planning meeting,
Yeah.
anybody that has a feel for what they
What
think, what could work and what couldn't, we all want to be to that.
Yeah.
But I would plan on being there. There would be some things that I'd like to talk about.
Yeah, and you're looking for the best use of what type of growth in what area of town. So
Mhm.
what's residential, what's commercial, that sort of.
Sure.
So that's all.
And what you can sell to the city, to the community.
Gary, do you have any 15-second training?
Just that your master plan is your best rational basis for zoning.
Yeah, that,
When you actually say, we're gonna change the zone,
yeah, being
this is your rational basis, right?
and that's going to
That's why it's-
therein create some
That's
discussion.
hence what is the big deal to me about it. Because once we pass this, then we make zoning changes according to.
But on the other hand, everything that you currently have stays as long as you want it.
Right.
It's only when
Right.
someone comes to rezone that the new land use comes
If
into
you've got a
play.
higher density and you've approved it in the master plan, in my mind, the developer comes and said, by the way, I'd sure like you to change the zoning.
Then that's what you
And
go
your
to.
general plan calls for it, you'd have a hard argument
I
not to
see,
do it.
that's my point right
Well,
there.
there's two reasons for doing it. This is the nice part about it. One is that there's been a change in circumstance. You can allow for that. The second is that there was a mistake in the master plan. And there's actually a third, which I like very, very much, and that is not everything needs to happen right away. So there's a timing issue in the master plan. You may have a master plan in the future for commercial out there or for industrial, but now may not be the time. And you can dictate the timing on
Just
those
at will.
changes. Just by looking at what's developing around it, looking at the infrastructure, whether you got enough infrastructure, looking at whether you got transportation handled, and maybe it's leapfrog. Maybe you've got a development way out here that is industrial, it's zoned for industrial, but it's anticipated that all this will develop and you'll have the right streets, the right infrastructure there. So you wouldn't need to change that.
On this meeting, Gary, would Steve be part of that? I mean, he could give us similar counsel. Or is that something?
Steve
that-
Garside?
Yeah, Steve Garside. Or is that this 2-hour meeting that we've got coming up that we expect to talk about it?
And that's on the 17th.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you will be there. I have a,
Would that be him rather than you, I guess?
yeah, I have a commitment on the 17th. I have a surgery or something on the 17th.
Ouch.
A root canal. No, I'm just.
Yeah, postpone it. We're more fun.
I know you are. So I apologize, but yeah. Sit out there for a while.
Yeah.
I'd love to be there though. This is the most important, one of the most important things you'll do.
Yeah.
Will you?
I'll be in Prescott, Arizona.
Ah, that'll be a nice time of the year to be in Prescott.
or Prescott?
You know, we'll have to. Unless the city council is there.
Yeah, if you live there.
That may be the.
But Steve will be there. I'll make sure.
Yeah, that may be our mission critical meetings for the first land.
Like Cooper. It's the only joint meeting you've had, right?
exactly.
Well, no, we met for a presentation last city council, but that's all it was. He just handed it out.
I remember.
And then we looked at it. To be honest, there's things going on there that I'm not sure it fits in with what we're doing. So I think with the planning commission, with the county councilors, at that point, there's enough of a group. There's some critical mass that we can
But you
lay
don't,
out some.
there's nothing that
some
forces
ideas.
you to pass this quickly.
Yeah, that'd be another question.
I mean,
If it was 2 months, 6 months, it is what it is.
if you want time to look it over.
Yeah, I think it's,
And to have a meeting with the planning, with the city council.
my guess is we'll be changing it from what we has proposed. Just the gut feeling.
But yeah, this is important. So,
This zoning in particular, I mean, the parks and trails and all of that are cool. You know,
Yeah.
just whatever. The zoning is, well,
so there's different elements. You've got your transportation, you've got your all the different elements of the
I mean,
plan.
as soon as,
Affordable housing,
yeah,
parks and open space, transportation, housing, economic development. Those are all.
so there's my home right here.
Mhm.
This is a field that the owner, built his home back there, but he developed 10 lots here 30 years ago. So now all of a sudden I wake up and say, well, that's what is it?
Commercial,
Yeah,
general commercial, right? Or is it the other one up there?
GDMU, general
Oh, DD.
downtown mixed use.
Yeah, so.
I mean, what's a general downtown? You know, I've got to figure out what that is, but nonetheless, it's got a
It's higher density. is
yeah,
what it is.
density. Yeah. Well, and so does
With a
Holt.
mix.
Remember our Rupp subdivision? Sorry.
Welcome. Morgan City Council,
We can talk.
April 26, 2022. Like to welcome everybody that's here. Excited to hear from you in just a minute. And would like to let the public know, if they're on Zoom, that once again, we had a work meeting. We discussed a lot of the items, so we're appreciative or grateful we can put that knowledge out there that we do discuss things. Let's see. I'd like to give the Pledge of Allegiance, and Jeffrey, would you offer a prayer?
You bet.
Repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful for this beautiful spring evening here in Morgan and for the opportunity that we have to meet in the Morgan City Council chambers. Help us to be able to reason and think through the issues at hand here in our community, that we'll be able to make wise and prudent decisions that will benefit the citizens today, as well as prepare us to meet the needs of the future that lies ahead of us. We're grateful for the community that we have and ask a blessing to continue to be upon the citizens of our community and those that serve and watch over and protect our rights and freedoms. But ask a blessing to be upon our state and national leaders as well, and other world leaders, that they'll be able to work to find peace and resolution so that we can continue to develop as a human race. We're so grateful for all that thou blesses us with. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Does anybody have a motion for the approval of the meeting's agenda?
Minutes.
Mayor, are we gonna look at the
Warrants.
minutes of the previous?
Didn't I say previous? Oh,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah. So
Before I move on to, I need to excuse Jeff Wardell. He wasn't able to be with us. A motion to
It's just to accept the agenda.
accept the minutes of the city council work meeting April 12th
And the warrants.
and the warrants. Well, it's a city council work meeting.
He was doing the C on 7C.
Did we do that? Have we done that before?
We started trying to do that.
We did.
Above the approval of the,
I bet. Keep going. You're on track.
Well, I'll just fix this for you, Mayor. I'll make a motion that we approve the meeting's agenda.
I'll second it.
Eric, you need to go
all in
green.
favor?
Aye.
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 My mic wasn't on.
Yeah,
Okay.
push the
Move
mayor's,
on.
press the mayor's to.
Push that either. You're green.
Oh. Could you hear me out there? Good deal. Now, let's move on to item 8, the
So in case you have a
consent
change in the
agenda.
agenda, that's why you adopt it.
So I have one question on the warrants. Just on page 1, got a $2,200 refund to John and Joan Meekum. Just wondered what that was.
Say on page 1.
Oh, so,
Oh, no, page 2, I'm sorry.
yeah, so, they had come in and accidentally wrote their check for, that much more than what their actual bill was,
Bill for.
their utility bill.
Oh,
So,
gotcha.
so we gave them the money back and instead of just applied a credit for the next several months.
Hmm. All right. Yeah.
Actually, I don't think it was a check. I think it was a mistake on the online pay and then we refunded it back to the,
Oh, I
yeah,
see.
yeah.
You took out
So,
2 weeks worth of dinner for him.
yeah, somebody made a mistake when they paid and I think it was an online payment, but then they're like, oh no, this just happened. And so we refunded them the difference.
That's the only question I have.
Mayor, I have a question on the warrants as well.
Okay.
Let's go over to page 5. Perhaps it's my eyesight. Down on the very first column there, $13,000. $13,075. Is that for publications and ordinances?
Yeah,
And professional and technical is 600, or again, am I looking at the,
Line across, right?
my line, am I lined up right there? It kind of caught my eye.
Yeah, I think that was a payment to for the general plan. But let me look at it in the itemized, because that's a summary, that's on a summary.
Mhm.
So it recaps in the report. So if we can find it in the actual report. Let me look real fast.
It just seemed like it seemed like a lot for that and not a whole lot for professional and technical, but that could be
There
correct.
we go. It goes.
Was it the publication or the professional?
Well, the one that has $13,075 is publication.
It's under J.A. Jones and Associates.
Publications and ordinances.
13,075.
So yeah, that's that should be professional engineering.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. It seemed like professional was sort of engineering fees or professional and technical was sort of light.
So it's under J. Jones and Associates, 13. Okay. Got it. I can change that one. That was a good catch. So the 46.
You okay with that one?
Yep.
Any other discussions?
We'll just comment last meeting, when we had a question that didn't line up. Remember, and it was Gary Crane's. I said it was actually,
Napa Bill?
yeah, this Napa. It actually, no, it had actually been corrected before the checks went out. So on that report, there wasn't a check number assigned, and the report came out before the check was cut, and that one had already been caught and fixed before so anyway, it was a good catch, but when we went back to fix it, it didn't actually happen that way. So
Well, no wonder he didn't want to change my oil.
for $2,000, they would.
Yeah.
So anyway, appreciate
It just didn't look right.
I appreciate that. That's good. We'll get that fixed.
Mayor,
Tony,
I am prepared to make a motion if you are ready,
I'm ready.
that we approve of the minutes of the city council work meeting on April 12th, 2022, and the minutes of the city council meeting on April 12th, 2022, and the warrants covering the time period from April 8th through April 22nd, 2022.
I'll second that, Mayor.
Okay, we have a motion from Tony and a second from Jeff to approve the minutes of the city council work meeting, April 12th, 2022, minutes of the city council meeting, April 12th, 2022, and the warrants of 04/08/22 to 04/22/22. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. Well, we're excited to have a presentation. I don't quite know your name. Could you state your name when you come up to that
Push
wonderful mic?
that button on that mic and turn that green, and we can get you recorded.
You passed.
There you go.
My name is Abby Anderson. I am the senior class vice president of graduation, and I'm here on behalf of the senior class today.
Nice. Welcome.
Perfect.
Very welcome. We appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me.
But let me get this through my head because I think school government's changed since we rode in here on horse and buggy.
A little bit.
You're in the junior class?
I'm a senior class.
Okay, I was misunderstood. I thought you said the junior class representing the senior class.
No, you get to have them next year.
Okay. Well, we're ready to hear.
Perfect. So we're just here to coordinate the annual senior service activity that's on Wednesday, May 25th. And so some of the ideas we've had is to clean up State Street and Commercial Street and just clean up the garbage and different things around there and do whatever needs to be done for those two streets and any of the local businesses around there. Another idea we've had is to clean up the Riverside Park and the walkway there and power wash the garbage cans. And then we're really welcome to any suggestions or recommendations you guys would have for anything that you think in the community that could be benefited with our service activity this year.
Is this money earmarked for Operation Graduation?
Yeah.
Is Operation Graduation, does it even take place in Morgan City any longer?
The
Yeah,
event
does
itself
after
or the
graduation.
service?
At the high school.
Yeah, do they still do it over at the high school?
Yes, that part.
So we do it for the Morgan community. So we'll do a service.
I think you're getting confused.
But graduation
Talking about a
will probably be at Weber State again.
It's going to be up at the Davis Event Center.
Okay, and then you come to the high school for Operation Graduation.
I don't think last
No,
year.
it's at the Rush Fund Center.
Rush again.
Oh, okay.
So it's like the prize for Operation Graduation, which is over the whole week.
So we
I
make
guess
a
I,
contribution.
I'm not, this is not how I'm going to vote on this. So please don't misunderstand me. I guess it rubs me a little bit wrong that we're donating money for Operation Graduation when Operation Graduation is not even going to take place in our city and benefit some of our businesses. It's, you know, like it technically like it used to be, you know, you'd go to the bowling alley and things like that. That just sort of bothers me just a little bit that that money's going to go outside of our community. But it's a good project. I just had to, I had to state that.
The one year, I appreciated when, by the Riverside Park, I went through and cleaned up all that brush and the grass, and there was a lot to clean up there. I appreciated that the one year. I thought that made that kind of a lot more desirable, is what I'd say to that. I remember that one year we did that project.
Well, here's what I appreciate. I appreciate that somebody's willing to actually make an effort to do something instead of just coming to petition the city for a check. I think that's extremely important. But to me, it makes it have a lot of integrity, because instead of just saying, hey, we need money for Operation Graduation, the senior class is saying, we're willing to work for that money. And you have some great project ideas. I've talked for a couple of days to some of the people that walk around in this building, and we thought they were fantastic. The only concern we had was power washing those garbage cans.
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of I don't know if you have to wear a gas mask or what. You know?
Has
Main concern is just that trash pickup is the next day, so all of the trash cans will be full of trash. So we're not quite sure how to go about cleaning those trash cans when they are that full.
The way I understand this would be the excess trash cans, not an individual house's trash can, is it?
the ones at the park.
The ones at the park. That's the ones we're talking about, not the, okay. All right. Some of them need attention.
So you mentioned you'd maybe be open to other considerations. I'd say to Ty, is there anything that comes to mind that we could?
Yeah, we
use for a
just,
service
we
project?
actually just started communicating on the list of ideas. If the council's supportive, then we'll definitely just narrow it down and work with the department heads. I'll just help coordinate whatever's safe and feasible, because we also had some other projects that, you know, weren't necessarily the safest place, but 70 people for 3 hours is a huge lift.
And that's an arm. Oh, yeah.
When you got departments of 2 and 3 people. And so we just want to make sure it's done safely if they're out in the streets or public right of ways and stuff like that, that it doesn't become a big traffic issue. But good ideas. And I think no matter what we do, we will coordinate as it gets closer and nail it down if you're okay with us just handling
And
that.
help with equipment or truck to help pick their stuff up.
Yeah, and we might just divide up in a couple of departments, so maybe, X amount of people go with the road department, couple with the parks. And really just where we can use extra
Good.
set of hands and.
What if it takes 6 months to do the service project?
You're on.
That's gonna be more.
Okay.
Well, you guys
Pass it
totally
along.
missed an opportunity to say that it's way more than $500.
Price just goes
And
up.
then,
Pace more, Dave.
So anyway, yeah, we can handle that. And we do appreciate like the mayor said, we do appreciate the
The efforts.
efforts instead of just a handout, which it's the other thing is wherever they hold it, that money that they generate goes to the students. They do, it's all prizes and, right? Like
Yeah.
almost every dime other than whatever you pay the rush center or whatever to reserve it, but that money does end up in, a lot of the kids walk away with a pretty good little graduation gift.
In
I
the
mean, I was
past,
just, I mean, I guess what I'm thinking of was last year, the first year, the after graduation was not held in Morgan. Has it been second? I mean, I guess in my mind, as I thought about it, I just remembered the bowling alley would host something and I'm thinking are we taking a little bit of money out of their pocket? That's kind of where I was coming from with it.
Yeah.
So, it's like I said, it's not a deal breaker to me, but anyway.
I volunteered one year when it was at the school. So it was all the school's facilities and we hosted games and
Right,
it was a really fun
right.
time. But it also took a lot of volunteers to run the games.
To
Where
do it.
the rec center has the facilities. So there's pluses and minuses.
I'm young enough to remember that it was a lot of work for parents
To say you think
to organize the games and.
you was gonna say you're young enough to remember Operation Graduation. I said, you're a liar.
Not my day. So I'm thrilled about it. I think it's awesome. And I think so we can get this right is we're kind of getting your services for some nice projects and in reward for that, the city generally issues a $500 check.
Historically.
Historically, that's what we've been.
Yeah.
So for a motion,
do we need a motion or just an agreement?
Kind of a head,
Just a head nod on
kind of a head shake.
is this just a head nod? I thought because it had something to do with
Budget.
money.
It's budgeted.
But
We
Okay.
got a budgeted item, so it's already there.
Yeah.
it's already there.
It's already there in the budget.
We don't even need a motion, right? We can just.
But
nod
don't
our
tell the
head.
next class that because we'd like to see them too.
Don't worry, I won't be around soon.
We didn't give you very many ideas on projects, did we?
Well, she'll work with Ty.
You're gonna work with Ty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're gonna work with Ty.
We'll get some.
Hey, I know, the end of Commercial Street over to the fairgrounds. It's a real mess right
Yeah, go rake that up, would you?
Bring your shovels.
now.
Yeah, it's a mess.
Backyard, Tony.
Back there.
Okay, so I guess we're all in approval.
Yeah.
Do it.
Agreement. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, you guys.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you for representing your class.
No problem.
Thank you. And Ty, I'll just be in contact with you.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Mrs. Romero.
Good night.
Okay. So on the active agenda, the settlement and agreement between Morgan City and North Morgan Water Users Association, Resolution 2214. I'm not sure how to approach that.
I guess after our discussion in the work meeting, I like a motion to table it wait for the next round of updates and see what the
Proposals.
proposals from the Water Association is going to bring to us. So are we good, Ty, do you think, till the May 10th, aren't it? Going to be too soon?
Yeah, I would do the next one. I,
More general plan discussion. That's the
of which May? Of,
May 24th.
no, I think the first meeting in May.
May
Yeah.
10th?
So one of the considerations is we want to probably have it at the next meeting because some of the members are really anxious to get the agreement done for the summer, summer season.
Season coming up.
I would imagine that we'd want to start the new, if the agreement is agreed upon, I would think we'd want to start the new rate schedule on the fiscal year, right? July 1 for the,
Well, it's whenever we close, so we still have other processes to go through before it's still gonna take several months.
so we won't make that date.
No, and it doesn't, and for budget, it doesn't matter which day it,
I was just curious if that was
Yeah.
kind of a,
yeah,
the
consideration. but
goalpost out there, but
No,
So
just
the
to not prolong it if we can, so.
Jeffrey's resolution would be tabled until May 10th.
May
Does that-
10th?
Does that work? Okay. A date certain of May 10th, 2022. I'll second your motion.
Okay, Jeffrey made a motion to table the agreement on the settlement agreement between Morgan City and North Morgan Water Users Association, Resolution 2210 or 22-14. Dave seconded that. Jeff,
Aye. Oh, any other comments? No.
any more comments?
yeah. So the intent would be to have the Mason have this agreement tidied up by May 10th. Is that correct?
Hear back from the company.
And then we would submit it at the same time to the company. Is that what you anticipated, Ty?
That what?
Once we get the amendments from Mason, we would submit those with the amended language to strike out and add in to the company to show them,
He's already sent them a copy. They're looking at it right now.
but we've got some more changes.
Oh, yeah. So he'll just send them, this is our latest.
So,
clean
yes.
copy, so that we,
Currently, we're gonna be doing that, so
Okay.
get it moving forward. This is exciting, so it's a good deal.
I believe I do a roll call. Is that correct? Jeffrey?
Aye.
Tony?
Aye.
Aye. I didn't get your name out. Eric?
it's okay. Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Denise, it's unanimous. Okay, item B, amendment to the city manager agreement, resolution 2215. Is there any discussion on that?
Mayor? Noting that we did have discussion on this in our previous work meeting, I would make a motion to approve of, let me get to the right place here. Resolution 22-15, amendment to the city manager agreement.
Tony has a motion on the resolution approving an amendment to the city manager, resolution 2215. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
And any discussion? Jeffrey,
Aye.
Tony,
Aye.
Eric,
aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Vote was unanimous, Denise. Okay. Approval of the item C on the active agenda would be approval of the PEHP medical and dental rates for the dates of July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2023. Once again, we talked about this in the work meeting, and is there any discussion or?
I guess just Ty, to pass on to the city employees, thank you for their efforts to keep the premiums down, to keep healthy and doing the things that not getting hurt and to go and to drive their prices up. So you've worked hard as a group to keep those prices down so that we can continue to do what we're doing. So pass that word on to all of our employees.
I will, thank you.
I just have a comment that any employee that I've talked to has not been unhappy with this. It's a huge thing.
It's a good thing.
So these numbers will be plugged into our tentative budget.
Any more discussion?
Mayor, I'd move to approve the PEHP medical and dental rates for July 1 to July 2022 to July 30th, 2023.
I'll second that.
Okay, Dave has a motion to approve the PEHP medical and dental rates for July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2023. Jeffrey,
Aye.
Tony,
Aye.
Eric,
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
It's unanimous. I don't think I recognize that you seconded it. Sorry.
Denise has got it.
Learning as I go. Moving right along. Item 12, city reports and businesses and business. Ty,
Yeah, so I just wanted to update the council on water. We'll start there. At the last meeting, we kind of brought it up as a topic and of course, we don't start outdoor watering till May 15th. But I don't have a proposal, but I have gone through our ordinance and I think with a few minor changes, this is kind of the direction I'm going. But basically, if in the definition of landscaping, we include dry scaping or xeriscaping as a form of landscaping, that takes care of a lot of the other subsequent parts. Other than we have a percentage of green in the commercial district, commercial and manufacturing. Because right now our landscaping definition just says lawn, ground cover, annual perennial flowering plants, vine shrubs, and trees. But it doesn't include like a dry scaping as an option. And I think that is a reasonable first kind of step to look at, is as long as it's a permeable surface. So you don't want to create hard surface that causes runoff. But if it looks nice and it's placed correctly, that's just one thing. This isn't a thorough review, but then in our park strip, I think that's the other part where we require 25% of the park strip to be grass and evergreen shade tree and that sort of thing. And that's that's just in the manufacturing and commercial zones and the RM zones. So the apartment townhomes and whatnot. We currently have that situation. The development behind Tractor Supply, I just went and looked at that right now and they just asked, what do you want me to do? I'm not sure secondary water's even available. And when you go look at it, they're like, we could just, we could dry scape the park strip for sure, but the grass, we don't want to buy a bunch of sod and not be able to water it 3 times a week. And then, so anyway, there's just some of those things that we had agreed to and required in the beginning. So my idea is that we just, maybe I bring the wording changes and just kind of take that approach to not focus on the water restrictions, but because that's secondary water, we can leave that totally up to them. And like some of the feedback was, let's focus on education and, some of the other things that we've done.
So Ty, dry scape right today would be contrary to the ordinance. Is that correct?
On RM 15 or like on the RM zones and the commercial, they have to put in grass, trees and shrubs. And
Residential could,
there's no requirement.
there's no restriction.
There's no
Dry
restriction,
scape
right?
for Residential.
Yeah, there's no minimum. So for residential, it's just optional. We do have you have to have your landscaping in, but it doesn't, on those zones, it doesn't specify that it has to be green. And so we're comfortable just there, just saying, yeah, you know, save as much water as you need. And, you know, for example, it doesn't even mention turf. So there's some people considering artificial turf that may or may not, you know what I'm saying? I don't know, but maybe out in front of a business or whatever, they say, look, can we put artificial turf? We wouldn't allow that currently in our zone, in the park strip.
So Eric and Dave and Jeffrey, I don't know if you're getting asked this question, but I am. And so I'll ask you, Ty, and maybe the mayor, maybe Gary can chime in on this as well. I get asked all the time, if we're in a dire stretch, we're in a drought situation, why are we continuing to allow homes to be built in our community? I don't know how to answer that, and I've been asked it quite often. So I don't know how to answer it.
So,
I hear that.
yeah, so a lot of it is actually how the system's used. Of course, outdoor is what it is. It's not metered.
Right, correct.
It's, so some of it's just the way that the system functions. But as far as our city water system, we don't have a shortage. You know, we had some issues last year, and of course, we need to upsize one of our tanks just so we maximize the use of the water. But we had that discussion today, and like at North Morgan, if we had a 1.5 million gallon tank, that's 6 to 7 weeks worth of water of storage, and that's just at one site. So when you map out what does the summer look like versus the winter, when we don't capture all the water in the winter, that's just one measure that we can take. But if you put a moratorium and you restrict growth based on, you have to identify what it is, water, it's only a short term, and you have to identify, and this is the problem on the system, and you have to say, and this is what we're going to do to correct it. We don't currently have a on our outdoor watering, yeah, that's the big issue. But for the city system, we don't have a shortage
I
of
think it's
water.
optics, you know, more than anything. I think everybody is, you know, certainly down in St. George, a lot was about
Sure.
water and drought. And so I think a great deal of it's optics, but I just throw that out there because I get asked that quite often. It's,
Well, and the other
you know,
reality is depending on the development, but if you convert, you know, a hayfield
20 acres of alfalfa to
to homes, it's actually way less water usage than it was before.
So Tony, we learned down there at the conference also that the moratorium can only last 6 months.
Right.
In other words, you've got to correct whatever the problem
Right.
is. And if you've got a plan, it could be extended, but it has to be specific and the extension specific to the plan.
we had a moratorium on water once. Because remember, we had fire flows, and that's when we put the tank up in South Morgan, drilled the Island Road well. And we actually there for a brief period of time, we had a moratorium because we could not provide adequate fire protection. But we did have a plan in place to correct it, and we did.
Yeah, and I
So,
think part of your answer to the
Yeah.
community is new development pays for the water infrastructure. It's not coming from these people. In other words, they're saying, well, if they take this water and it's the water's at a X level, I'm going to be given less. Well, that's not correct. The development will increase the line that says, here's the water that's available. You still get your water plus the development through the cost and infrastructure pays for their additional water.
I think what they look at is there's only so much water.
Exactly.
So why,
But
you
the
know,
point being is that we have the ability and the capacity to increase that line, to increase that supply. And that's why development's allowed to grow. And more than that, we're mandated to do it. We have to increase the supply as the demand.
So if you were in a community that had you're in fairly dire straits. I mean, I was looking today at the snowpack. Was it Escalante, 9%, something like that down there? I mean, so if you're in a community that's really stressed as far as water is concerned, the only way you could put a moratorium in place would be to put a moratorium in place, but then have a plan to provide more water.
Well, and maybe the moratorium says there just plain isn't any more water. Then, yeah, then you've got
yeah.
that line that you can't increase. Sure, then you stop
Yeah.
building.
Yeah, but again, I think it's a lot of it is optics for sure, you know, but, you know, I didn't know if anybody else was fielding that question or not, but
Yeah, I'm filling them up, not every day.
yeah.
But I talked to the mayor of Hooper, who's totally dependent on our Weber River. Echo Reservoir,
We're in good shape.
One
actually.
Ship Reservoir.
They don't have wells.
Suppose he's just
They don't have aquifer.
Well,
sulfur water, I guess, down
I
there.
realized it not.
They treat it pretty heavy. We just did a project down in Hooper on a big filter building
Wow.
that they had to filter their
Mhm.
well water. Because some of
Gotcha.
their wells down there, they, when that comes out, it smells horrible. They haven't even been able to put it in their system. So they just build a huge filter building, pulling it out of their well. I mean, we are fortunate here, and here's the way that I answer that question, Tony, because I get it quite a bit, is what source of water are you talking about? Because the Weber River is one thing.
Secondary water is one thing. We're pumping it out of,
Our
yeah.
culinary system right now is in great shape.
It was interesting down
Because
there.
you talked about the source of water, right? Is it out of an aquifer in a well, or is it out of a spring? Is it spring fed? Our springs are still somewhat doing good for us, right? I mean, if the North Morgan, if they were to dry up, we still got the aquifer that pull out of our well system, right? So our culinary system's in great shape.
Yeah.
But it boils down to, like you say, the optics of it. But you gotta ask the next question of what's the source of the water? What you talking? I mean, because I was talking to some guys down in Hurricane City, their water guys, they were telling me that they got a subdivision for 7,500 homes in one subdivision. Another one that's coming is 3,500 homes. They're looking at 10,000 homes going in down there to Hurricane City. My first question to them is, where's your water coming from? Where's your water source? Which is huge. I mean, then I could talk about Arizona down in that country of their problems with their water, because I've been down there, but that's the biggest question is what water source are you talking about?
Yeah, and I was surprised down there how many municipalities still set all their secondary water, their outside water is still on culinary.
I think the thing that you're seeing too is the state is pushing to actually start metering everything. And that
2030, it's mandatory.
that's why, and you're seeing, we just had a call from our company because we, do the SCADA from municipality, and the state called us up going, where's their reports? What can you provide us with their numbers of what they're pumping and what they're actually using? Happening to us today. So it's interesting. I think the state's going to start tracking it even more, going, you're a lot of this, how much are you actually pumping and consuming? And that was on development.
So Ty down there,
We're off
they
on a
talked
wild
about,
tangent
they
now.
talked about if it was 2022 or 2023, 70% of that system of the meters, right?
Right.
Meters on secondary water, they'd step in and they would cover that 70% of them.
Right.
But as you got out to 2030, it just
Goes
gradually
down.
got less and less and less to where you don't have any.
Yeah, it's a tiered system implementation. So it starts at 70% of the cost and it goes 60, 50, 40.
Go try to buy a water meter right now.
That's what they said. That's what they said.
Yeah.
Your back order.
That's what they said. The guy said the good ones. He said the good ones, good luck.
Yeah.
All the municipalities are starting to swap water meters because they just can't, they can't get them.
Yeah.
Then there's a difference between quality and not.
Yeah, and kind of what we talked about last time, even with the Weaver Basin restrictions, the restrictions different for people that have meters versus the ones that are unmetered.
Well, I thought it was interesting that
Because, once you're metered and you have the ability to say, that's a fair allotment for your size of lot, then you hold them to that and you bill them accordingly.
That's how.
Then the water goes so much further than, the handful of people that just abuse water, and it's a detriment to everybody. So if everyone just used a reasonable amount of water, we don't have a lot of concern in the city.
I was interested where Weaver Basin has been selling the meters, at least last year we went on that tour and that,
Mhm.
we're not charging overage on them. We just want people to see how much water they're using. It didn't sound like that to me down at that corner. It sounds to me
Come on
like
now, because they have the ability to charge at any point.
Yeah.
once there's a meter.
they're gonna start charging you an overreach on secondary water. That's,
You
you
bet
know,
they are.
That's how they made the initial sell, right?
yeah, yeah. No, we just want you to be aware of how much you're using. Oh, and by the way,
We're
yeah,
off on a tangent.
It's okay.
Is anybody getting a lot of questions about, are we gonna open the splash pad?
yes.
Yeah, same thing, that's on our own culinary system. We'll probably operate, it has a 15-minute automatic shut off. So if no one's using it, it's not being used if they use it. So instead of condensing the hours, it's probably better just to let it operate as people decide to use it.
Wouldn't go all summer though, would you?
Mhm.
We didn't last year.
Well, last year we also had so last year, the spring, the flow in the spring reduced, right? So what we're gonna do is just monitor our springs and our wells. So if we have a drawdown in wells or reduced spring flow, then that's the point when we'll come in and start talking about what can we do. And at the time, was also when we started doing a lot of leaks, and we also didn't have the same controller on the timer. Our park was also, we have a brand new sprinkler system on a brand new controller that will use way less water and actually be able to have it green than last year. You know what I mean? So there's other,
I gave us a bit.
Nonetheless, last year we had a campaign to preach conservation. If we're preaching that, we probably shouldn't be running the water park at the same time.
and that's a total council decision if that's the direction you want to go. So when we bring it up, you can talk about whatever, restrictions, and just like if there's something that just looks better.
Yeah, exactly.
But
May not use that much water, but it's the appearance.
well, on the other side is the other thing you get to consider is, do we want to have the park space and the splash pad available so people don't feel like they
Turn the sprinkler on in their backyard.
do so much on their own and say, well, this is a public amenity. So it goes both ways. So we can think about it. We can reduce the hours, we can reduce the days, whatever
Yeah, maybe, yeah. there you
Whatever
go.
you'd
Maybe
like
a
to-
compromise or something.
whatever feels good to the
Yeah,
council,
maybe
but-
restrict it somewhat.
But up until last week, we were still spilling water out of the spring because we couldn't capture, the tanks were full. So just depends on, and the way the rest of the weather pattern goes. So, I don't have any problem saying, hey, we just noticed a reduction. But the one thing is we left the rates that we adopted last year have been an incredible motivator. So if you remember, in just the month of August, over the previous 2 years after we adopted that rate, the very next month, we saved 4.7 million gallons of water in 1 month. And so that's still intact. I think we just start where we left off.
I think
We're in a good pace, I think.
a lot of this whole issue boils down to education. When you say that we saved 4.7 million in the month of August, that's a huge number. I think part of it is educating people as to Tony's optics. The Weber River is one thing, but our culinary system is a whole separate entity and a whole separate thing. The two aren't even remotely combined, but yet it's the optics. And I think a lot of it, we just need to educate because, I heard people about the splash pad and river water, and I'm like, it's not river water in the splash pad. If we did that,
We could have Giardia.
yeah, I said, we'd really have some problems, so it was just people
Well-
asking questions, but they didn't really realize that's not river water, it's culinary water, it's,
And
but they just don't know.
But and the reverse of that was true last year too, because when we started doing our campaign, people were like, there's plenty of water in the river. I don't know what we're talking about. And in May 15th, when they hit the watering season, they're gonna have to hit certain flow rates to satisfy
Everybody's take.
the water rights. And a lot of that is intended to flow right past us. That's the whole system.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so some of it's just based on knowledge and education. So
Wouldn't you expect a drop in wells this year though, also?
Not necessarily. We didn't have drop-in wells.
We had that wet fall though too, didn't we?
Mhm. And that's a hard thing to tell, but we have a,
I think we have a lot more groundwater.
we have really good producing wells that we run on a part-time basis currently.
What prompted our conservation last year? What?
Spring, it was the spring
The
flow.
Spring, not the well.
Mhm.
And I'm still counting on Sunday evening rainstorms every summer.
Good. Yeah, once a week. Just order those up.
You're on it. Let's do it.
So,
You get that to happen there, that'd be awesome.
anyway, that's kind of where we're at. I'll maybe just bring just some new language on just the ordinances of what we can do. I think on that development, we've already, last year, we told a development to go ahead and just dry scape their land strip, just because of the situation and that's an easy thing that will save, save some water. Because park strips are the worst.
Yeah, it just goes down the gutter.
It's interesting what some of the comments you get up down there. So there was a couple of guys, and the one that was just adamant about the fact that Zeroscape does not save that much water, because if you don't have grass and trees, it just makes the ambient air temperature that much hotter, that much. That's an interesting concept right there.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic. So anyway, but as far as our system, so far so good. We'll keep an eye on it and then just maybe take those other measures. But as far as putting restrictions on the secondary system, I do have a meeting scheduled with the secondary water to just kind of talk through their approach and let them know where we're at. One of the things I am concerned about is spending our time, running around policing any restriction that you put on is just time much better spent on the actual system and leaks and.
The meters will help with that.
Are they aware of the meter situation?
Yeah.
on
Oh,
site?
yeah.
Yeah. And it would almost behoove them to get on it sooner than later. And
Yeah, we'll be talking. Yep, we'll be doing what we can. So,
First deadline for the first tranche is in May.
yeah, there's no way they're gonna meet.
they're not going to make that.
Yeah. They have a couple years though for the 70% still for 2 years.
22, 23, I think is what it's.
Tranche, I guess.
Yeah. Just a couple other updates. So our basement project's moving forward. It's framed out. So the plumbing's in the floor and it's all been, the walls have been framed out, starting on HVAC. We did have a little change order where we're gonna get one new furnace, but then tap into another furnace that exists down there for the other half of the basement, just because it was underutilized. It's only heating the hallway upstairs. And so that was a good move. The sprinkler system, if you remember when we did the bid down there, was overpriced. And so we have a credit towards some of the other expenses to offset. So they've been really good to work with. What we're doing is just they're just keeping a budget and a spreadsheet of everything that was up, over and under kind of thing. So we can just maximize the funds there. The depot project's going well. We got a commitment from Geneva for special pricing on concrete. Yeah, and so they're putting that out to bid right now with that pricing. They were getting a bid today. The asbestos removal will start next week and will last up to 2 weeks. They said depending on, the attic, it might take them 2 weeks to get all the asbestos out of there. Commercial street realignment started, as you may have heard. It came with a few. It's just like everywhere you dig to find a pipe, you find it, and without dirt holding the thing together.
What kind of pipe?
Just anyway, it's all gonna be brand new pipe anyway. It's just if we can keep the current pipe together while the new one's being constructed will help us out a lot. But anyway, people have noticed and asked questions and, but that project's
We're going to town.
started, yeah. We just received the first shipment of pipe out at the sewer lagoon project. So we have,
Get some pipe, good.
yeah, so we have a pre-construction meeting for that finally next week.
I thought he said it was 8 weeks out. It came in sooner.
Well, and they just said first shipment. So I don't know what that means until the pre-construction meeting. So,
All helps.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's, I don't know what
2 6-footers.
it means, but it's good to see that project.
I think we dodged a bullet with the cold weather we've had.
Mhm.
Could have been worse.
Yeah. Then the sidewalk project hasn't started yet. It was supposed to have already got started, and so you might hear from some residents because they went and said, you got to clear all your stuff off the street, and then nobody showed up to do the work. So I don't know what it is about living on 100 North, but everything we do there seems to
Backfire.
yes. So I don't know if there's somebody put a, anyway, I'm not gonna go there. But anyway, but we are starting environmental, because it's, federal money. They have to do an environmental review on the sidewalk project. And so that's gonna start next week. And then that project will keep moving forward. And we are putting together a grant application just in anticipation of this North Morgan thing to look at upgrading the tank as a next step. The Bureau of Reclamation has upped their dollar amount for drought resilience. It used to be a $2 million cap, and now it's a $5 million cap, and it's a 50-50 match. So we're gonna explore that opportunity, see if we can't get our foot in the door for that, and then work on getting maybe state money to help with the match. But again, that's a huge benefit if we can upgrade that tank. Right now, we just don't dare move on it without owning the property, and the rest of the story. So kind of just trying to outline that. We did apply. Denise helped again with another application with Senator Moore for additional bridge funding. Last year, if you remember, we asked for some additional. Last year, they called it gap funding. This year, it's a different one. But because we got denied last year, we upped the dollar amount by $1 million this year. So, but it's just totally contingent on the federal process, federal funding, and if they have another spending bill or whatever, we may be considered for that. We applied at COG for the $250,000 to buy the property from the school district over there for the commercial street line realignment. So the COG approved that proposal to go to the county. So I'll make sure it's on the county's agenda and they vote on it. Well, so they have a meeting coming up next Tuesday that we want to make sure it's on the agenda. And we just need to pay attention to that to make sure that the recommendation goes through, because we have a commitment to purchase that property from the school.
North Morgan property purchase, what are the funding sources there?
Tony, you want to answer that?
Well, I'm sorry, pardon. Jeff was bothering me.
David just asked how we're gonna finance the purchase of the North Morgan property.
Creatively. We use Ty's term creatively.
So we have to start with the appraisal, but what we do have is we do have some money in the capital improvements fund. The idea was originally to use that for the bridge, and we'll probably use that for the property, and then and then hopefully get the grant money for the rest of the bridge. And if there's a shortfall on the bridge, it'll be in a subsequent year, and then we'll likely just do a revenue bond to pay our difference. So it's That's not to avoid the question. I just love that Tony pays attention to my answers.
Creatively.
Then we are creating a municipal building authority fund that will own the facilities and the land. And then, of course, the shop, and our own departments will lease the space that they occupy. And we can probably use the municipal building authority to purchase the land up by the
Of
springs.
course, that helps out with our renters in the basement then, doesn't it? I
Mhm.
remember you saying
Yeah. So that'll be in the tentative budget.
Okay.
That fund, you'll see the revenue source from the basement and then from each department. That'll help start to fund the future needs of buildings, but that's Denise got that fund created, so appreciate your help on that. She's been helping me out a lot more on the budget and working with Ryan's office to get journal entries and stuff done to transfer things back, because every time I think I'm gonna be on top of it, I'm always a little behind, so. I think that's all of the project updates that I have.
We just had a planning commission compensation.
Oh, yeah, so that came up at the last meeting. I'm working on that to incorporate it into the budget. But one of the interesting things that we found is that we can do compensation up to a certain dollar amount before it becomes taxable income. And so that's probably what I'm gonna propose, is staying under that. So it's a de minimis, compensation, because if we go just beyond that and cause a taxable income, then the actual amount that they receive would be reduced, you know what I mean, instead of just,
W-2.
and I think and I think the intent was to not make them employees, but just to give them compensation. So it's between the per meeting amount plus, like the Christmas gift card, all of that has to stay under a certain dollar amount. So that's what I'm evaluating right now. And then, so I'll come back with that proposal as part of the budget.
That was a good suggestion, Dave, by the way.
Yeah.
That was.
Yeah, thank you. I think that, like we were saying, it has multiple effects that'll help us out. There's just a moral, psychological, whatever you want to call it, victory in saying we recognize their value.
Good suggestion.
I just have a comment. So that was a good comment, and it came during the updates. But if any of you have something that you would like to consider that would be a decision of the board, either talk to me or the mayor beforehand, and then I can do the homework on it. You know what I mean? Because we wouldn't have known that. I wouldn't have had the answer for that dollar amount, so we threw out some numbers in the meeting without really knowing the.
That's reasonable.
Yeah, and the concept, no problem, but I just kind of feel bad if I don't research it, you know what I mean? And
We'll give you the concepts.
Yeah.
Work out the details.
or come back with a proposal, just so,
Laurie's been real valuable with that. She's pretty on the ball with that, and she's
helps with that.
researched it and helped us out a lot, so.
So anyway, that's all I think I have, Mayor. Oh,
I have a question. Did Valley Rentals just shut down, or did they move?
I think they're,
It's now Gale Force Electric.
Is that who bought it? Was that, who owns that building now? Oh,
Gale Force Electric, Gale Force Homes. They don't own them. They got a big payment every month.
mortgage on it. Did Nice move their business?
Joel,
They don't have that.
I can talk about that. Joel took another job. Joel was managing, Joel Stevens, he's
Oh,
my
yeah.
son-in-law. Took a job with Centerpoint, and at that point, Ryan elected not to keep it going.
So it no longer exists.
That was probably 9 months ago. At a fire sale, all equipment 50% off or whatever.
I only walk by it every day. I just noticed.
Oh,
it
really?
today.
Yeah, they just
I was gonna ask
probably
if
wouldn't
you,
see a lot from the outside, but He just,
Yeah.
he-
And
I don't know that
Achieve
he.
Fitness is still
Yeah, part of it.
part of that. They're gonna stay.
Yeah.
I just wondered, Tony, if you went over there getting aerator or something for your.
They
and-
aerate my lawn, but no, well, no, it was kind of
It's
handy to
closed.
have, they
Sure.
sell steel equipment and get your little 2-cycle engine worked on, or
Yeah, a small engine, it was invaluable.
it was a nice
Unfortunately, you couldn't
addition to
keep
the
it
fleet.
going.
Kind of hate to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sit down.
there just wasn't enough kaching.
Well, and they, just like everything else, had hard time finding employees that would work on small engines.
Yeah, yeah.
And I hate to say it, but we're used to going below.
We probably do our fair share.
Actually bought a couple of steel. power
Me
tools
too.
off of that Valley
Yeah.
Range.
I Took all my stuff there.
So, you done, Ty? Any
think so.
more? We're definitely gonna make before midnight.
Yeah.
4 hours earlier.
Oh,
Just, the only thing I have is planning commission meeting update. Dave, you were on Zoom.
yes. I can talk
And-
about that.
Do you have anything you'd like to?
Yeah, there were 3 items on the agenda. The, well, as well, the work session, let's start with that. We've already covered a lot of it, but work session was a presentation of the general plan update by Landmark Design. And there was a lot of discussion, quite a bit of discussion on it. In fact, it took up most of the hour that they spent. With the resolution, and we're just talking to Gary a little bit, that they want to, and well as in our meeting, they want to spend 2 hours in a further discussion of the meeting. And again, I'd recommend that all of us try to be to that one, that unless you're okay with the plan as presented. So there's some follow-up with that. They had 3 items, though, regular agenda items for the planning commission meeting. The Rupp subdivision, it was originally listed as a final approval, but it was, it was pulled. There's 2 items remaining regarding engineering, it needs a drinking water review and a stormwater conditions. So they're going to look at that next meeting in May.
And what I liked about that in the past, that probably would have been approved with that contingency to,
Mhm.
but I'm pleased that we have to have it all.
Yeah, there's a definite feel, and I'm not sure where the direction comes, maybe maybe the former mayor, maybe even you have talked about it or any of us, but there was a definite feeling that things be in place before they move them on to the city council. That said, though, item number 3 was a combining basically 2 lots over the Clark U dot subdivision. So that they combining 2 and making a 3rd lot. There's a lot 1 and 2. Those would be combined into a lot 3 that would give enough room to make additional storage sheds, as I understood it. But it includes bringing the road down and some work there. There were 5, though, and speaking of that, Steve, there were 5 conditions that the city engineer said needed to be met, and there was some discussion on, do we have those satisfied before moving ahead? But in this one, they went ahead and said, we'll approve the plat change, and it only needs the planning commission approval. That doesn't come to us. We'll approve the plat change in increasing the lot size and leave the items 1 through 5 that he had listed up to, I guess, just management with the city. Is that right? You guys will work through that? So that was one where they didn't table it to get all of the rest done.
Well, but it also had some
Concept was
confusion
approved.
on the ownership of extending that road. That when that did happen, then that owner, whoever buys that in the future would have to extend that, because right now it's not actually.
Yeah. Approval of the plat is subject to guarantee of necessary public improvements. An escrow account should be set up. Well, the city will make sure that,
Yeah.
that those public improvements or the easements are,
For outdoor storages now.
Yeah.
It's that piece.
the roadway utility improvement should run the complete length of the lot. No improvement drawings were submitted. So that's work that will still need to happen, but they went ahead with the concept, if you will, and not the specifics. What else was there? Anything else we missed? Yeah, Tony left a little bit early, but we filled in for you, Tony. It was a good meeting. We had a couple of new members and it was kind of fun to watch. We had Aaron Bott and Ray Little. And who moved into a regular position? Somebody that was an alternate moved into a,
Aaron and Ray's.
An alternate.
Ray is the alternate.
Yeah.
Alternate. And we also had Dan there.
yeah. And so Aaron chimed in with a couple of comments that I thought were just spot on. We're on mark. She did a good
Amazing,
job.
I thought.
Yeah. Almost like it was impressive that she was as in tune as she was for just a single meeting or a first meeting. And then the other part that was kind of nice is when the direction started drifting, Ray was there to bring it back on track as he did with us. He, he was very good in saying, let's look at the facts. Let's look at here's what we need to address tonight.
He's an amazing man.
Yeah. It would be a wonderful benefit to have him there just in the background. And he took a very backgroundish stance, if you will. He wasn't pushy or trying to lead out. But he was there to bring the direction back into place as it was needed.
Okay, any more discussion? I remember right, I don't need to have a motion. I just go adjourn.
I like that.
Bless you.
That is correct.
Should have handed him that last week.
Yeah. Hey, we can all go out to dinner. We got till midnight. Mary got nervous. She was just about ready to come